They had these these outhouses out there, and like you went in them, and there's like classical music playing. It smelled nice. It was like the Taj Mahal of bathrooms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah, I was like, wow. I was texting people from them. I was like, you will not believe.
Wow.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
Welcome back to another edition of the Politics Unplugged podcast. Today, Jessica Boehm is back from Axios.
Hello.
I'm so happy you're here. You wrote a lot about TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
Yes, I did.
We wrote a lot about it. It's actually a fascinating series of stories in Axios, and it also ties into the CHIPS Act, and that's become such a political hot button, particularly with this president now, who is said it was a terrible idea. Right. Before we get into all of that kind of stuff, let's start with like your reporting on this. What was the most interesting thing you found reporting on this? Because to me, there's been a lot written about how much money it's going to bring to the state, how much jobs it's going to bring, and the future of semiconductors and how important they are. But to me, when you were writing about the cultural differences there, that really stuck out to me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a fascinating development and company, right? Like, it's really hard to overstate. Like, I know everyone does, but it is hard to overstate just how significant this is. I mean, I always I joked that I felt like I was visiting the castle on the hill, because you see it when you're driving on the 17, and it's this kind of special private thing, and so it was really cool to get to actually go out and see what it all looks like. And I think for me, I was just shocked with the scope of how big it is already, and it is in its very early infancy. The other thing that I thought a lot about is that this has the potential to be one of the largest employers in the state. Certainly one of the largest in the Valley. You grew up in Chandler, right?
Kind of. Went to high school in Chandler.
Okay.
I grew up in Iowa, but yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The important years, Chandler.
I did too. And
C-Town.
Yes. And Intel was such a important anchor of everything in the East Valley, but especially in Chandler. And I think this is kind of like that on steroids, or it has the potential to be that. But what's interesting is, of course, this is not an American company, right? It's a Taiwanese company. This is their first major venture in the United States. And that comes with a lot of growing pains. The specificity of the products they're creating is not the same as what we have in the U.S. currently.
There's not a lot of, well, it's good enough.
Right. Yes. And so they've had to bring over many Taiwanese workers and send American workers that way.
I think you reported half the workers are American. The other half is from Taiwan. Or international.
More than half is what they tell me is locally hired. The other, the remainder, yes, mostly Taiwanese, but international, I suppose you could say. And so that creates just there are cultural differences, and especially workplace norms are different. The level of intensity that they expect at TSMC, the striving for perfection, the putting the company at the very front, is something that I think we've kind of gotten away from as American workers in a lot of ways.
I believe we talked a little bit before we started taping. I think one of the things they were talking about that you reported was the difference between American and Taiwan and workers and workers they're accustomed to, where workers in Taiwan are always about, okay, what's the goal? Great.
How do we achieve it?
How do we achieve it? And Americans are okay, we disagree with the goal, maybe.
Right. Like, should this be
Should
the
this
goal?
be the goal, or should we move on?
Yeah.
Right. But they're saying that this was essential to their growth as an international, like, powerhouse in this in semiconductor chip manufacturing.
They do. They believe that that level of like dedication to a singular goal is why they are, without question, the global leader in this industry. And so they expect that same level of like commitment from their American workforce. What was interesting is like it does feel like, I mean, now they've been up and operational for a couple of years, and it feels like they're starting to find like where they have to be like a middle ground, because like clearly the way that things are in Taiwan is not going to work exactly the same here. But there is an expectation difference than maybe between this company and another U.S. company.
So what is the future? Let's talk a little bit then about how big of a plant this is going to be. Like, how many jobs are there now? What are we looking at? I believe it's going to be about 10 years until we see this fully built out.
Oh, yeah.
Or more. What are we looking at? Where are we now? How many workers are there now? What are we looking at in the future?
So they're at about 3,000 workers right now, and that's with one fab, which is a fancy name for like
a plant.
The plant, yes. Yeah. They are planning to get up to 6 fabs. So what they and other things like manufacturing facilities, R&D facilities, but just by the time they open their 3rd fab, which they I think their estimate is end of decade. We should be at 6,000. So we'll double by then. And then they're expecting, the rate of growth to continue at a similar clip from there on out. So you imagine, 12,000-ish by the time all the fabs are open. And then they're also planning to build 2 advanced packaging facilities and an R&D center, all of which will have similar numbers of employees.
Yeah, and these are workers that run the gamut in terms of salaries, correct? As they're really starting to look for all sorts of workers, basic high school graduates all the way up to PhDs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, obviously with private companies, they're not always like releasing specific numbers, but anecdotally and from what you can determine from like Glassdoor and online resources like that, the comparison to similar jobs is that these are better paying than similarly qualified jobs. What is really interesting to me is the folks that they're trying to get to be technicians, because like basically you have 2 big pots of employees. You have the engineers, which are coming out of 4-year universities and beyond, and then you have technicians who are more doing the more technical elements of maintaining these facilities. And those folks, like, you don't need to have a college degree. There's like a 2-week boot camp at like community colleges. It's fairly easy. Easy is not the right word, but like it's accessible to a much larger portion of our population. And those are the folks that, like, I mean, you're coming in at maybe 40, 50,000, but the potential to earn more over a short amount of time is there. And as you know from reading the stories, like some of the folks I talk to that are going into these positions, they're coming from working at In-N-Out Burger and Wendy's. Like, this is a very significant difference.
A life-changing opportunity for them.
Yes.
Have you given much thought? Have you heard anybody talk about, I mean, you bring up Intel, and I think also, Chandler, giant job creator, also a lot of political power.
Yeah.
Have you given much thought about like their increasing political power as this this company continues to grow out there? I mean, Intel is just, I mean, they're everywhere. Yeah. They're at the city halls, and particularly you talk about Chandler, they're at the state legislature, they're all over the place, and they're always wrapped up in the mysterious stakeholders. Whenever they have those stakeholder meetings, they're always wrapped up into this. Has there been any thought about that? Anybody talk about anything like that?
Yeah, what's so interesting about this company, and part of it is just the nature of it being an international company, is like they're not eager to be the face of anything. Like they're very, very low key, which is like kind of hard to figure out, because I'm like, you can be low key, but also if you're coming in and going to be one of the largest employers in the state, like people have questions.
Yeah.
So it's like a hard thing to reconcile sometimes, but.
Well, there are significant cultural differences.
Yes.
To be sure.
Yeah. And that is completely fair. That said, like, you're not seeing them like they're involved with the city and things, but they're not going to be like, it would shock me if they're all of a sudden like the face of like city council meetings and things like that. Okay. The way you might see other big companies locally being. That said, like, and as we kind of hinted at with the CHIPS Act and everything else, like there is a much stronger need for like they have a much greater influence nationally in the political circles, just because of like how significant this investment is, not only to Arizona. We talk about like it's so great, Arizona jobs, blah blah blah, but like this is actually like part of like a national security mission for the United States, right? Like we're trying to produce more semiconductors somewhere more stable, hopefully the United States. And so this is actually like has way more of an impact on the national level, I would say.
Yeah, and I think locally too. I mean, they're rolling out the red carpet. I mean, these are folks bringing good paying jobs, life changing jobs. I mean, a lot of money to the state, to the city. It's not like they're going to, that they're not going to get most of, if not all of, what they want, as long as they're being reasonable about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they probably don't have to be, the going up to the dais at the state legislature, like, people are ready to do their to make
for their 2 minutes.
2 minutes, please.
Okay, that's enough. TSMC is opposed.
Exactly. They probably don't need to do that because there are lawmakers who are very much in their corner.
Yeah. And what's the take? What's their take on the president? Now, he's just all over the map when it comes to the CHIPS Act. And and recently he said the CHIPS Act is a terrible deal. How does that play in all this? What have you been hearing about? Any feedback from that?
Yeah, I mean, again, the company itself is tight-lipped, not going to get into that. But what's fascinating to me is, like, obviously we saw a month or two ago now the CEO of the company in the White House with President Trump announcing a $100 billion expansion on top of the $65 billion expansion. That was hugely politically symbolic, right? This is obviously something that must have been in the works for a very long time. But to be able to decide to make this announcement next to the president, it's showing that they are attempting to work across administrations, which is something they have to do.
Well, it's confusing and not confusing when you start talking about Trump on this like this. When you think about Trump and where he's all over the map on things, and okay, it's pretty expected, but it's confusing in the sense that Trump has talked about bringing back manufacturing jobs. Right. And these are the kind of manufacturing jobs you'd think that he would be touting. You don't want to bring back the old school, assembly line type jobs and things like that. Like these are the kind of jobs I would think you'd be wanting to tout. And here he is, it's a terrible deal.
Yeah, well, it's confusing because he also said this is so amazing that TSMC is doing this and we're so happy they're here.
Yeah, and it's just say the CHIPS Act when he starts talking about the CHIPS Act, not specifically about TSMC.
Right, but it is even his economic team in the White House that day with the CEO there. He literally said, we gave them $6.6 billion for the CHIPS Act and now they're investing $100 billion. Yeah. And it's so did you support that or did you not? And I think what's interesting about the CHIPS Act side of this is at the end of the day, $6.6 billion is no small amount of money. No. But if they have already committed to this $165 or billion investment, they're probably going to do it regardless, right? But there are other elements of the CHIPS Act that have to deal with building workforce, right? And that's where I think there's more risk is, are they going to, find ways to take that pot of money and not impact when we talk about the CHIPS Act, we're mostly talking about like grants to companies, right? But this other slice of the pie is to develop workers, to expand the whole pipeline, because we know that it's not just making the semiconductor now, right? We're seeing all these other companies come in to support TSMC because you have to have specific packaging, you have to do all these other things. So I think the bigger risk is all of that extra stuff the CHIPS Act does, and most notably the workforce. And my story really, the crux of it is that like we have this amazing opportunity in Arizona to hook up a lot of people with high wage jobs. But if we can't figure out how to train them and get them in the pipeline, we just squandered it.
Yeah, no, it is an enormous opportunity, an enormous investment. And you're on this show, on this podcast, because you can't go to a political speech or rally now without somebody mentioning TSMC, without somebody mentioning the CHIPS Act.
Absolutely.
At this point, and it's like we need more and more and more of this. Right. Do you see CHIPS Act making any more impacts here in Arizona? Is there another? You're hearing talk of other firms coming out here. I mean, or is it just TSMC's expansion is obviously the big story right now?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine anyone would make an investment at the scale of TSMC, but there are so many companies coming in to support that pipeline. Like their customers, their suppliers are all coming into Arizona wanting to be close to them. So yeah, like there's only room for growth, and it would shock me if there wasn't more of it. But I think the question is, with the CHIPS Act and everything else, is I think sometimes like politicians play like a weird game with it, right? Like it's like they actually support the outcomes, but they don't want to credit the CHIPS Act for creating them. I think that's the long and short of it.
Politicians spinning this to make themselves look good? I'm shocked.
I know. It's very weird.
So we've got a few minutes left. Take us a little bit behind the curtain, because I am fascinated. You've spent your entire career reporting on, American politics, businesses, and stuff like that. This seems like this was a bit different because you were dealing with you had a cultural barrier to go in with people from a country who does business in a very different way. What was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there is just a different level of understanding of like media and public relations and everything else. Like as we were talking earlier, like the low keyness that they want, it's hard to like justify in America, because we're like, wait, but like you're
this giant castle in the middle of nowhere. You're like, people are going to want to know about you.
Exactly. Right? And so it's kind of one of those like hard push and pull where like there's obviously a cultural thing, but what I got from talking to the president of TSMC Arizona was like, I think sometimes it comes across as like hiding things or something like that. But I really got the sense that like culturally they find it off-putting to not be humble, and that like by promoting themselves too much, it's almost like bragging, and they don't like that. Like they don't feel comfortable or that it's professional or appropriate. And so that kind of helped me to understand where they were coming from on some of this, that like it's not necessarily because they don't want to be a part of conversations, but just that they don't, philosophically agree with like the American PR culture, which is like a whole other conversation for another time. But that was fascinating. It was also fascinating for me to talk to some of the folks who went to Taiwan to train, and like just what they were able to pick up on. I mean, we talked about the difference between like, do you agree with the goal from the outset or not? But there were other things that just, it was clear that like the workers like in Taiwan that work for TSMC have just like such a large amount of pride for the work that they do in a way that I don't know that a lot of American workers feel about their employers here, for worse or for better.
I, for one, feel wonderful about my employers.
Me too.
I want to be very clear.
I would like to also put
I
that
have
on the
nothing but
record.
pride in my employers. I know Colin does.
Obviously, that's all I hear from him. It's pride.
Absolutely, yes. I want that on the record as well.
Incredible.
All right, I think we'll have to wrap it up right around there. I want to thank you very much for stopping by here. And before we let you go, do you got any new shows you're watching? I'm looking for a new show since Severance is now out of my life.
I didn't watch that.
You got to get on that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to.
Okay.
We just talked about work. You got to. Severance is all about work.
It's all about work. Okay. Well, did you watch The Traitors?
No.
Okay, you have to watch The Traitors.
Okay.
It is the best thing on television. It's like, it's basically like, I'm trying to think of like an example. It's a reality show, but they all live in this weird castle. And
Wait.
there's like some
killing me.
murderers. Some people are murderers. They're the traitors. They kill people.
Oh, okay. All right.
So yeah, it's like, there was like a game when we were kids called like Mafia, where like you're trying to figure out who the killer is. It's kind of like that.
You played a game called Mafia?
Did you not?
You grew up in a different Chandler than I lived in.
Anyways, it's lots of fun. You should
We
watch
did not
it.
play Mafia.
Okay.
Next time you come back, we'll explore that. Like, how did you win Mafia?
Well, you killed everyone.
This is a happy game.
or you figured out who the killers were. It makes a lot of sense. The Traitors is great. I highly recommend it.
I mean, I played basketball and football and baseball, and you played Mafia.
Yeah, it was all about the mind games for me. I don't have the athletic prowess that you clearly have.
I clearly wasn't very good at it.
Oh, Lord.
All right. Hey, thanks for stopping by here. We'll see you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Welcome back to the second part of the Politics Unplugged podcast. Colin Stanton, producer extraordinaire. Dude, how's your week been, man?
It's been a week. It's been fine. It's been okay.
Yeah, it seemed like
the weekend, but it's been
it seemed like a lot of little to medium things this week just sucked up all the time.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah.
What'd you think of Karen Taylor Robeson, the report from Axios? Not Jessica, who was just on the show. It was a national
reporter. Yeah.
Reporting that two of her consultants who had deep ties to Trump just took a walk.
Yeah.
And they issued a press release?
Yeah.
That they're bailing?
Yeah.
Good God.
And we've been marveling at how early she was running these commercials, touting her connection to Trump, the fact that Trump endorsed her. And the reason they're bailing is in part because she didn't run the ad sooner, which is intriguing when we're 16 months out from the election, something like that.
Dare I say that a couple of consultants from D.C. was looking for a payday?
Yeah, I mean, that certainly could be it. There's also sort of an aspect of, like, when you buy front row tickets to the circus, you might get sprayed by one of the clowns at some point. I mean, if you sign up for everything Trump and somebody Trump tells you to do something for Trump, you better do something for Trump. Even if it seems absurd. I mean, 16 months out was not early enough to start the ads touting the endorsement, so they pulled out and bailed.
But I mean, to your point, in for a penny, in for a pound. You hire these people for a reason. Now, I'm not talking to Karen Taylor Robeson. Why haven't I talked to her? Because she has refused every request I have put in to speak with her.
Yeah, she doesn't.
She doesn't do it. In particular, I'm starting to think that maybe Karen Taylor Robeson is bad at this. It's just bad at politics.
There's certainly nothing suggesting the opposite so far.
No, I mean, seriously, you can't sit down with me or somebody else in the media other than some, the friendly confines of a conservative radio show.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
And again, to your point, it's very well taken. If you're hiring these Trump people because you want Trump's endorsement and they're telling you to do some stuff, you might want to, freaking consider doing it.
Yeah.
You
yes,
know?
when you're hiring, I think it was like a co-chair from the Trump campaign.
Yeah. So again,
to work on your campaign.
Yeah. So again, maybe she's just bad at this.
Yeah.
She spent $20 million last time around. She's going to spend
and lost the primary.
She's already spending millions, 15, 16 months before the first ballot is cast in the 2026 primary.
Yeah.
So how much she's going to spend this time around? I don't know.
And I haven't heard a whole lot of analysts suggesting that she's going to win that primary.
Yeah, and she's not like somebody that's bringing people to their feet to applause like Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake is a lot of things, and people who listen to the podcast probably can say a lot of good and more importantly, bad about Carrie Lake.
Yeah.
But she was an effective communicator, and she was a damn good politician on the stump. Just from that point, she could electrify and get her people going.
Yeah.
Does Karen Taylor Robeson have that kind of riz, as the kids say? Does she have that kind of juice? I haven't seen it, and she's not going to talk to the media.
Yeah. And frankly, I don't know who her people are at this point.
Yeah.
Because she wants them to be MAGA, but I don't think she's winning that over Andy Biggs.
Mm-hmm.
So her decision to align herself so thoroughly with Trump has always struck me as odd, simply because obviously you need to have the Trump support to win the primary, but you're not beating Andy Biggs at the Who's More MAGA contest.
Yeah.
And in a year, I don't know that the Trump endorsement is going to be as valuable as it is right now.
I think it's still going to be very important in the primary. And that's, the politics. It's almost like Jimmy Valvano from North Carolina State back in the day, right? Survive in advance.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to get through the primary. Otherwise, nothing else matters. And, and does Trump's endorsement matter in the primary? Oh, yeah, you bet it does.
It will, but you're still running against Andy Biggs, man.
I know, yeah.
And as long as you're turning it into, Kies Mas MAGA, Biggs is beating you.
Yeah.
So if you can capture some of the people who are not quite as enthralled with MAGA, that seems like a better strategy, because I don't think she's winning the straight Trump vote. No,
and it's also ironic, too, that, 5 years ago in 2020, Trump was hitting Biden for running a basement campaign and not going out and doing many events. And I think there was some of that same criticism in 2024. Well, Karen Taylor Robeson, she may not be running a basement campaign. Is she running her private yacht or private jet campaign? Because all I get are text messages from her spokespeople, which I'm fine. I'm happy to use them.
Yeah.
But I want the sit down. I think other people need to see the sit down. If you're going to annoy people with your ads, this early on, and run them and continue in rotation like this, talking about Trump, well, let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Because Trump, isn't going to be the governor of Arizona. Karen Taylor Robeson wants to be governor. Well, sit down. Let's talk. Again, maybe she's just bad at this.
Yeah. I keep coming back to, why are you doing this?
You're spending all this money for a job pays $95,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why? Why are you doing this if you don't want to go out and do the work?
And if I had that kind of money, man, I could find a lot more entertaining things to do than sit on the 9th floor.
Well, yeah.
Go out on one of the yachts. It's peculiar to me. I don't
get on. This is what I would do. I'd just get on the jet and say, surprise me.
Yes.
I've got my passport. Surprise me.
And it doesn't seem to be a case. I don't want to, put in words in her mouth and what she believes.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm not sure she's ever put those words out in what she believes particularly. But she doesn't seem to be that big a political animal. Like Biggs is a political animal. Biggs wants to be governor because he thinks he has a very set view of how he sees the world and wants to.
He's got a world. He's got a world. He's got a philosophy about certain things, like it or not.
Yes,
It's there.
and so it makes perfect sense that Andy Biggs would run for governor because of those beliefs.
Yeah.
I don't see any particular sign that Karen Taylor Robson has those beliefs.
Yeah. What's her philosophy? What is her political North Star? How does she see the world?
And she would argue at this point it's Donald Trump.
Well,
Whatever he says, that's what I say. But that wasn't how she ran 2 years ago.
No.
So what
the hell are we
don't
doing?
you have anything better to do with your time than this?
Yeah. It's like she's an empty pantsuit.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. You got to see more from her. The point is, I think voters have to see more from her too.
Yeah.
You know, Andy Biggs eventually going to come out and start talking.
Yeah.
You know, and Andy Biggs is going to be Andy Biggs. You know, and again, if you want to survive in advance, you got to win your primary.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't matter. You can spend another $20 million if you keep doing what you're doing. You're just going to have the same result.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
It's all strange to me.
You know, it's just like it's all political ambition.
Yeah.
But you know, speaking of political ambition, we got a senator now.
Yes.
You know, churning up some speculation that he may be eyeing 2028 there, either for the Naval Observatory or the White House.
Yeah.
Ruben Gallego's off to the great swing state, the Keystone State of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can see why he's an appealing candidate. It's funny because when they're local and, you know, you've known Ruben a long time, there's just something odd about, really? Presidential run? And I remember you asked him about it, maybe half jokingly, and his response was, they don't elect people like me president. I'm too short.
Yeah, he literally said that.
Yes. But he's a veteran. He's, you know, fairly strong on, you know, by Democratic standards, he's fairly tough on immigration while being Latino.
His critics would say he's too tough or too Trump on maybe immigration on certain things.
Yeah. And in 4 years, I don't know what kind of issue that's going to be.
I mean, it's hard enough to predict where the politics are going to be in the midterms.
Yeah.
Let alone from 2028. But yes, he certainly checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, in this world we live in now, is you've got to check the biggest box of all, and that is, I mean, for lack of a better term, are you entertaining on the stump?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you've got to be good. You've got to be a good candidate. You've got to be able to go out there and talk to people. You know, Ruben comes from a humble background. He can maybe speak that language.
Yeah.
He is, again, Hispanic. He's Latino. He can talk about that. There's been a lot of concern with Democrats and they're losing a sizable percentage of the Latino vote to Donald Trump, which, you know, what is the Latino vote? I get it's not a monolithic vote. It's a much larger conversation. We could have a whole podcast just on that.
Yeah.
But like he is war hero. He's got a lot of things going for him on that.
He does. And I suspect you're going to see a pretty big change in the top of the Democratic Party, because I think by and large people are very, very tired of the same old, older, meek leadership we've had.
And you're seeing a lot of different, you know, people trying on different things right now. You got, you know, Gavin Newsom,
who seems to be trying to attract the alt-right as much as he can.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that guy's doing.
No,
you know, Gretchen
it ain't gonna work.
Gretchen Whitmer's doing her thing. You got the fight against oligarchy, you know, with AOC and Bernie Sanders. And, you know, a lot of people looking for what's the voice, which direction. And now is the time to be having those discussions. Now's the time to be trying that out.
Yeah.
So let's see, you know, you don't know. Let's see, you know, Ruben's going out there. And if nothing else, he ups his profile, which I think in turn pays off in campaign financing. I think it ups that. I think there's no lose in doing what he's doing right now.
No, not at all.
You know, I'm just interested in what's Mark Kelly's ambition in the future. I mean, here was a guy that was this close to being on the vice presidential ticket on the presidential ticket. He was going to be vice president. He was in the running.
Yeah.
He was one of the finalists for that job.
He's hard to read on those. I mean, he doesn't give you much on a personal level.
No.
It's hard to gauge what the political ambition is.
And I was told just a little while ago before the show, it's like they don't feel that Mark Kelly has the fire in the belly for this kind of thing. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, he doesn't give you much. He's not an emotional kind of guy like that. But here is a guy that had the drive to go from a son of a cop in New Jersey to become a combat fighter pilot, to becoming a commander of a shuttle, space shuttle, to a senator in Arizona. I mean, there's a lot of drive there.
Yes, I get why he does not exude necessarily political fire in the belly.
Yeah,
but you don't get to where he is without a huge amount of drive and accomplishment, and he may just be low key in the way he portrays that.
Yeah, because I just don't read him as the kind of guy that wants to make a second career out of the Senate. I don't see him that way.
No,
I see him as like somebody who's just kind of like him being on the vice presidential ticket. Last year could have been like, my way out of this damn boring chamber.
Yes.
That just talks, and does nothing.
He'd probably have to work on the public speaking. He's not necessarily the most dynamic stump figure.
No.
But he can get better at that.
But here we are. I mean, this is the things I guess we talk about when we live in a swing state.
Yeah.
On an important swing state. And it's going to be like this for a little while. I mean,
not changing anytime soon.
So moving on to sports this week, big headline, new general manager for the Suns.
Yes, who is in perfect alignment with Matt Ishbia.
I was going to say.
Perfect alignment. The alignment, perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, then we championship next year, right?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know that the fans were worried about the alignment with Matt Ishbia, but that seemed to be the message. They're perfectly aligned. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Whatever the owner wants, that's what I want.
It seems like Ishbia's running the team.
Yeah.
And he owns the team. He can run it.
Yeah, he can run it. The history of the owner running the team, there's not a lot of success stories there.
No, I mean, not even Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban was like the number one fan.
Yeah.
And I'm sure had to sign off on big deals. But
yeah. I mean, they at least got the title out of it with Dirk. That hasn't happened yet here. It was frustrating because, I mean, they were floating the name Bob Myers around, and Bob Myers is the guy who assembled the Warriors and is now working for ESPN. And to have that floated, and then it turns into Matt Ishbia's buddy, who used to be a college coach and was an assistant at Michigan State when Ishbia was there, and his entire NBA experience is 11 months because Ishbia hired him as a consultant for the Suns.
So do you think Ishbia changes the name from the Suns to Spartans?
I don't know.
There's a lot of Michigan State.
Try it.
A lot of Michigan State folks around here. A lot of Michigan folks.
I would like to know how many calls he's put into Tom Izzo in the coaching search. The coach at Michigan State.
I think Izzo should just pull a Dick Cheney, just like help him. Like, I went out and I searched and I found me.
Me, yeah.
I'm your guy.
Who knows? I hope it works. It's not a hire designed to appeal to the fans, because I don't think I've heard from a lot of fans who are all that thrilled with the former coach of Georgia Tech, who's a buddy of Matt Ishbia, is taking over as a general manager of a team where he has two jobs immediately.
Yeah.
Try to trade a guy with an impossible to trade contract.
Bradley Beal.
And try to trade one of the greatest players in the history of the league in a situation where you better get the absolute most you can get for him.
Mm-hmm. Which may have already been diminished because of another big name.
It doesn't help. There are going to be some big names on the market, and that doesn't help. I would like someone who's actually been involved in a trade before to be the person in charge of trying to trade Kevin Durant. I think that would be good.
You're so damn demanding.
I know I am.
You want experience? Come on. How do you get experience, bro, without doing it?
I mean, he's been in the building for 11 months.
11 months.
So there's that.
11 whole months.
Yeah. So, but now he can build the culture after moving into the new office from down the hall. Anyway.
Oh, boy. Well, hopefully, last thing I'll say on sports, man, is hopefully when this pod drops, the D-backs would have swept the Dodgers.
Hopefully, yes.
I doubt that happens.
I
but
do
we
as
can,
well.
We
but
can
you
hope
never
and
know.
wish.
Yeah, it's happened before.
We can hope.
Yeah.
We can wish. We can wish.
Yeah. I was amused to see the Who has launched a farewell tour, or announced a farewell tour. Their North American farewell tour.
They've been saying goodbye for a while.
I saw them on a farewell tour. It was billed as the farewell tour in 1982 at the
Wow.
Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum.
Wow. Who took you to that show?
Went with a couple of high school buddies.
Okay.
Yeah.
82?
82. Oof. Yeah. The opening acts.
Yep.
T-Bone Burnett, which there was a big room for T-Bone Burnett at the time, and the Clash.
Well, you always got to rub. You
I do.
always.
I do.
I'm protesting. You always rub that in my face. That, I saw the Clash not once but twice.
Yeah, to clarify, that was the first time I saw the Clash.
That's the Time Machine band, dude. It's like not even a question. Like Time Machine, you go back and see anybody. It's like, oh yeah, go see the Clash.
Yeah.
Or it's either the Clash or to go watch Jimi Hendrix open up for the Monkees, because that would have just been fun.
Yes.
Anyway,
one thing I remember from being, a fairly young kid and seeing the Who on their farewell tour, they seemed impossibly old. Like, you think of the Who from the 60s and 70s, and it just
they were like 32.
I think Townsend was 36. Now Daltrey's 81 and Townsend's 79, I believe.
Well, it's time for them to say farewell.
But yeah, it was like, I'm a dumb teenage kid, so I'm thinking, it's great that they can still do this, even though one of them's already dead at that point.
Oh boy,
because it was after Keith Moon died.
Yeah.
But they still had Entwistle. Yeah.
Great drummer. Sad story.
So yeah, they had 3 out of 4 of the originals, and were still, it was an inspiration to see these old men get up and still do their thing at 36.
It's old bastards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's your wheelchair, old man.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I remember that, man. I remember that.
Yeah. So between that and then I brought up on the Steve Hoffman forums, which for people who don't know is like the big music message board on the internet, full of like the most pretentious douchebags in the world. If you want to see people arguing over which pressing of Kiss's Music from the Elder is the one you have to have, this is the place for you.
Now you're baiting me with Kiss. You're just baiting me.
I mean, if you're a music geek, it's a fun thing, but a lot of the regulars are just a little nuts. But there is a thread on there now where someone's asking for people to submit their top 40 Clash songs in order, and then he's going to collate all of them and come up with the top 40 as according to the people. So didn't want to do 40, but since we're both Clash fans, I know they're very important to you. Challenge you to come up with your top 5 Clash songs as we both go to the notes section of our phones.
All right. Yeah, because I got old Duder's noggin, man, is just filled with so much stuff. I believe they call it Newsheimers.
Yeah.
Being in the biz for so long, yeah.
Yeah. All right. You going first? You want me to go first?
You go first this time.
The top 4 for me were easy.
Okay.
The 5th was a little tricky because there were a lot of options. Number 5 for me, Stay Free.
Okay.
From Give 'Em Enough Rope. I am a little too much of a hipster doofus to allow myself to put Should I Stay or Should I Go on there, which is a song I love, but I can't put that in the top 5.
With you on that. That's why I didn't put that on there, because I'm way too much of a hipster doofus, too. I can't put the obvious stuff in there.
I can't put the obvious stuff in. Although my top 4 at least is my top 4. But like, Should I Stay or Should I Go hit the point where it was like used as music in an ad for cloud computing that I didn't understand. At that stage, like, it's hit a little too solidly mainstream. Number 4 for me, Police on My Back from Sandinista. Great song, as we were discussing earlier. It's a cover. I felt a little weird putting a cover on here, but it's a great cover.
And I was today years old when I learned it was a cover.
Yeah.
So you're more of a pretentious hipster douchebag than I am.
Yes. That's quite an honor. You wouldn't think it's a cover because it fits the Clash so perfectly. It's
So
a great
well.
song, and
Dude,
it just sort of sounds like them.
The guitars in that song.
Yes, and it's originally by a band called the Equals
Mm-hmm.
from the late '60s, and the guitarist of the Equals who wrote the song but doesn't sing it was Eddie Grant, who had the hit, Electric Avenue, is the song everyone knows, and then he did like the theme "Romancing the Stone."
Yeah.
A lot of great reggae artists who those were the ones people know. He did a lot of stuff you don't know that's really good, but it's actually his song. Number 3, Somebody Got Murdered.
Oh, that's
Also
that
Sandinista.
That is a good.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have talked. Side note: we have talked and made fun of Sandinista because there's like 40 songs on Sandinista.
Yeah.
But there are about 5 songs on there that would make the greatest EP in the history of
Yes.
EPs, because the songs that are strong on that record are amazing.
Yes. And as I was going through it, I was like softening on the notion of you have a pretty decent single disc record. I mean, if you went full size LP,
Mm-hmm.
if nothing else, it's better than Combat Rock,
Oh yeah,
and certainly better than that thing I don't acknowledge that came after Combat Rock. Cut the Crap.
Oh yeah.
If I can, to divert for a second, the second time I saw the Clash was the last Clash show with Mick Jones.
Mhm.
After that, they fired him because he was too poppy or something, and replaced him with 2 other dipshits, and recorded "Cut the Crap," which they don't really acknowledge exists. And I bring this up to say my favorite story out of the band they put together for "Cut the Crap" is they had a guitarist. They replaced Mick Jones with 2 guitarists, and one of them is, I believe, Vince White. But that's not his real name. His real name was Greg White. But they had to change it because Paul Simon, on the bassist, said he would quit the band before he would be in a band with a guy named Greg. So he had to change it to Vince to appear on the Clash song that the Clash has disowned. And anyone who gives a shit about the Clash has disowned it too. It was
Garbage.
Genuinely awful. Number 2, Death or Glory from London Calling.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
You can't go. Like there's about 2 songs on London Calling that you couldn't go wrong with. It was about 2 songs I'm not a huge fan of on that record. Everything else is just
Yeah, it's a great
great.
one. My number 1, also London Calling, Train in Vain.
Yes.
It's a brilliant song, one of my favorite songs by anyone of any era.
I think between our 2 lists, we've got most of London Calling probably covered.
Yeah.
Because
It's
we
hard not to.
don't have any overlap except one song.
Yeah.
Yeah, one song. And yeah, I mean, I put number 5. I had Janny Jones
From the first album.
from the first record.
Great one.
Number 4, still sticking with the early records, Safe European Home.
Oh,
It's a good
also
one.
from Give 'Em Enough Rope, right? Yeah.
Such a-
Great song.
that
Great
is a
song.
really good song.
Yeah.
Now, number 3, this is where we overlap. Police on My Back from
Yeah.
Sandinista.
Yeah.
And we're going to round out my top 5, again, going to London Calling with number 2, Lost in the Supermarket.
It's a great song.
And then number 1, Spanish Bombs. That I love
Yeah.
that song. It's about the Spanish Civil War. It's the vibe on that whole thing, and it's part of like why I like. And I think we both had a cover on this list, even though at the time I didn't know it was a cover.
Yeah.
Was "Police on My Back." The vibe of that song is just great.
Yes.
I mean, with the guitars playing the police sirens and
Yeah.
just amazing. But here are the songs that I mean. This is how the songs that didn't make the list that I was considering was "Clamp Down."
Great song.
Rudy Can't Fail. How
Yeah.
did none of us
know.
how
I
did none
know.
of us pick Rudy Can't Fail?
It's a brilliant song.
It's brilliant.
Yes.
I had Death and Glory,
Okay.
Tommy Gun,
Yeah.
and Guns on the Roof.
Yeah. One thing I thought was interesting looking at my list, and yours is a little different on this, but Joe Strummer sang like 80% of their songs?
Yeah.
Probably. 4 out of my 5 are Mick Jones songs.
All right.
And most of the ones that just missed, like Should I Stay or Should I Go, are also Mick Jones songs. I'm much more of a Mick guy than a Joe guy.
Yeah.
Yours is a little heavily Joe, but a pretty good mix.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I wasn't that big of a fan of Joe Strummer's solo career.
There are a few good songs there.
Except toward the end, it seemed like he was really finding a really great vibe and voice with the Muscaleros.
Yeah.
And then he died.
Yeah.
I mean, the last record he put out was really, really, really solid. And compared to some of the earlier stuff he put out, and like it was just super sad he died so young.
Yeah. Coma Girl was a great song by Joe Strummer.
Coma Girls, yeah.
And Mick Jones has had a really interesting career with Big Audio Dynamite, and he's probably been the most prolific. But although Simonon's done some stuff with, he's done stuff with the Gorillaz. He had one called The Good, the Bad, and the Queen.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Like, how do you follow up The Clash?
Yeah, you don't.
It's like not only were they a great band, but like just the coolest band.
Yeah.
It's just anyway.
Yep. So neither one of us had London Calling on it. Neither one of us had
because we're hipster douchebags.
Rock the Casbah or Should I Stay or Should I Go?
Yeah, because we're hipster douchebags.
Yeah. And legitimately, I mean, I love London Calling. It would not make my top 5. Again,
no.
Should I Stay or Should I Go? If I were being 100% honest, might have cracked number 5.
Yeah. And if you ask me tomorrow, Rudy Can't Fail will probably be in my top 5.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, how did that? What?
Yeah.
And part of me was like, I was skewing too heavily toward London Calling. In like the earlier records, Give Enough Rope, and were great records.
I mean, I think London Calling is probably a top 5 rock record. Like, not Clash record, rock record. It's
it's up there with like Rolling, Sticky Fingers,
Sticky Fingers, or Exile on Main Street. Take your pick.
Yeah, it's up there with I don't know what. Maybe that's a discussion later. Top 5 rock records.
We can do that.
Oh, yeah,
we can go there.
We can go there. People
We're
people will
good
listen
for a music discussion.
Yeah, people will, and then I'll get text messages on Monday going, "You guys don't know what you're talking about with this."
Yeah. How'd you leave Clapton off?
Top five Clapton records, 0.
What about that Clapton song about cocaine? You forgot that one.
No.
The proper answer is probably which one. Anyway,
I think we'll end it there.
Yeah, it's probably best for everyone involved.
All right, everybody, hope you enjoyed your weekend, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.